If I were to tell you that we've had the cure for diabetes all along, you probably won't believe me. If I were to tell you that you don't have to take any drug for the rest of your life, you probably think I'm crazy. If I were to tell you that we've had this resolved before the Western civilization and science showed up, you think I'm really delusional. But just hear me out. Give me a few minutes and I'll try to make a case for my bold statement. However, I will advise that I'm not a health practitioner here trying to give you medical advice. I'm giving you personal stories and personal experiences. That's it. Take them and do with them as you will. My name is Dr. G. I'm a holistic health coach. I am here to share some wisdom from an epiphany I had recently. So I'll share this story with you. Picture, say 1930, 1940, 1950. I'm thinking of my great grandparents. Okay, my great grandfather was born in 1896. He lived to be 120 years old and he never once visited a hospital. Not once in his entire life. And he still had high acute. He still was working to the very last moment. His vision got blurry, but that's about it. He was functional. In his 90s, we were asking him stories about when the white man first came to Nigeria, his experience, religion, culture, all of this. And he was still pristine. He could still tell you his experiences and the experience of colonialism. In his 90s, never once took a pill. So this is the setting, traditional African setting, right? I'll paint you a picture. If you've never lived in that era, if you've never lived in Africa, if you've never been to Africa, if you're born in the 90s, you probably have no idea what I'm saying. But let's try this. Picture this. Imagine it's a movie. A couple. They may have kids, they may not. Most of the time they have a few. They wake up in the morning. The standard wake up time is when the cock crow. That's about 5 o'clock in the morning. That's your alarm clock. You don't have an alarm clock, obviously. You live in a village setting, because everywhere was a village. And, well, I wouldn't say everywhere. I digress. Or maybe I'm too forward. There were still cities, and in those cities, the major cities, which are back then probably two or three major cities we're talking about in the 40s, 50s here. In that environment, the standard lifestyle, this is not unique to one family. This is 99% of everybody that lives here. This is what they do. Okay? They wake up in the morning with to their alarm clock. They pack up because usually mom would make what we call kunu, right? But it's like a traditional fermented beverage. She makes this beverage and they wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning and get ready to go to the farm. They don't eat breakfast. She packs up this drink. They leave to go to the farm. Usually it's the whole entire family, daddy, mommy, and kids. Everybody goes to the farm. It's not like the women were left at home to nothing, except if they have young kids. Those that have young kids, in most cases, what happens is the one woman would be left behind, because if they live in a community, which typically they do is communal, there would be one woman that has the younger kids, likely still breastfeeding. She would be left with the other younger kids to take care of them, babysit, while everybody else goes off to the farm. They go to the farm. They get to the farm by like 6 o'clock in the morning. Okay. While they're at the farm, this unique fermented drink is all they have to eat. Maybe sometimes they'll take some potato, cassava, some yam, plantain, something like that, where they will either have it boiled or roasted. So they'll take that with them. This is what they would snack on if they snack at all. Okay, and by snacking means they stop at some point to have lunch, because there's no such thing as snacking based on our definition of snacking today. But they would drink this drink throughout the day periodically. When they need a drink, they need some water, they need a break, what have you, they're drinking this drink. And it's typically made out of millet or some kind of grain. But typically it's fonio, it's millet, it's buckwheat. Like, those are the common grains at that time. Corn is not African, or at least not indigenous to my part of the world. So it later got introduced during trade. People think we've always had corn. We've not always had corn. Just like we've not always had rice. We've had wild rice, which, again, much different, much healthier compared to what we call today, or what we use today, or what we consume every day. So anyway, they don't leave the farm until about 5-6 o'clock in the evening. That's when they leave that farm and head back home. Oh, we walk to the farm, which is maybe 3 to 5 miles away from home, and we have to walk back home after farming. And this could be that you are cropping, you're weeding, you're cultivating, you're harvesting, what have you. There's always something going on. There's farming season, there's non-farming season. But even in the off season, which is typically harmattan season, they're preparing the soil, getting it ready for the next season. Like, there's always activity going on. You're not just Netflix and chilling, if you get my drift. There's always something happening. So you go and you do your farming and you do all your activity, and you've been gone for 12 hours. Remember, you didn't have breakfast. You got up and you went to the farm. You drank this drink and maybe some water. Maybe, if you're lucky, you had a potato at some point within this 12 hours. And you were active. You were not over there taking naps. You were active. And then you walk back home. On your way home, a few things are likely to happen. If you're close enough to a river, a lake, something, maybe you would have dropped a net and then grab it on your way home, hoping that you got lucky and there's some fish that you can go and add to preparing dinner. If not, maybe you caught a game, there's all that as an option. But if you're landlocked, you don't have any fish option, which is more like my great-grandparents. Fish was not an option. We're not anywhere close to accessing fish. So you might catch some wild animal if you are lucky. 8 out of 10 times, you are not lucky. You go home. Mom, my great-grandmother at this point, prepares dinner. What's for dinner? Typical dinner in my culture is either kidney beans, some sweet potato, some fonio, some millet, some dish made out of that. So if you're making fufu, right, you are going to, or tuo, or whatever you call it, you're going to take this grain and you make your ball and you make the soup. The soup. How do you make the soup? The soup is 90% some kind of vegetable, either fresh or dried, and then some kind of um, calcium carbonate, some kind of like locust beans, some fermented product, something to give it some level of flavor. But there is no bouillon, there's no corn or seed oil, there is no what there's no frying because it's there's really nothing to fry. Um, there's no salt. Sometimes you might have a little bit, but most of my traditional dishes they don't even add salt. So our major traditional meal actually comes with sesame seeds. So you have sesame seeds, and get this, they don't fry the oil. They ate palm oil. That was the main oil we had. And you finish your cooking and you drench that food with palm oil. You just pour fresh, raw palm oil onto the plate of food and you eat it. This happens maybe around 7, 8 o'clock. By 9 o'clock, you're winding down. 10 o'clock, you're in bed. Okay? And there's no television to go sit and watch for hours. There's no internet to distract you. There's nothing. You spend time, you laugh with the family, you tell stories. We used to have story times, you know? So they had story times. They share stories with the kids or grandkids or what have you. Everybody goes to bed. By 10 o'clock, everyone is gone. By 5 o'clock, you're up. The routine continues. What did we learn from this story? The main culprit for diabetes is glucose control, right? Glucose. Glucose is our main culprit. And what have we learned recently? That there's such a thing called glycemic index. And if you have a high glycemic index food, you are likely to end up with high glucose levels or insulin resistance, which is our main problem here. Whether you have type 1 or type 2 diabetes, it all boils down to insulin. Because insulin, which is the enzyme that's supposed to take up this glucose, is not doing the job, right? So, insulin resistance, either the insulin or the pancreas is just not making the insulin, as we know with type 1, or it's making the insulin and the insulin is like, I'm tired of you. I'm sick of you. I'm trying my best to help you. And you, my friend, don't want to learn. I cannot help you. So insulin is now rebelling. It's rebelling against you. Diabetes is a lifestyle disease, meaning you have control over diabetes. You don't have to live with it forever. So here's the moral of the story. Why am I taking you back to the village? Why am I telling you that you have a cure for diabetes and you've had a cure all along? Why? One, let's go back to the story. When you wake up in the morning, you don't have breakfast. What did they tell us about? Oh, the importance of intermittent fasting. The number one secret to diabetes, if you want to get rid of it, is fasting, right? Fasting. So what are they doing? Fasting. Daily, they're fasting because they go to the farm 6 to 7 days a week. So they're fasting. Oh, let me be generous. Maybe 5 to 6 days a week. They tend to have a day off. To be fair. So they're fasting. Second, they're drinking this fermented drink. What have they told us about kombucha, sauerkraut, and oh, you have to think about increasing your prebiotics and probiotics, and oh, the essence of eating kimchi and all these amazing foods that help build your digestive enzymes. You have it. You have all that you need to build the digestive enzymes in this drink. And then what's the other thing we learned about? Autophagy. Everywhere you turn around, they throw in the word autophagy, autophagy, autophagy. The ketone levels, building ketones. Well, you're active all day, you're barely eating, you're not pushing or skyrocketing your glucose levels. So I'm pretty sure they're reaching autophagy throughout the day during these long periods of not eating. I do think so. You can argue with me against that. That's fine. Even if they don't have autophagy, guess what? They have glycemic control. Because what happens? They're exercising. You remember, diabetes, physical activity, you want to maintain weight, you know? You want to make sure you're physically active. You want to make sure you're eating what? Low glycemic foods. And how do you keep your glycemic levels low? By eating foods that are complex carbohydrates. Complex. So, what did I tell you they eat? Sweet potatoes. Because Irish potatoes are not indigenous to Africa. So they're eating sweet potatoes. Fonio, that is now called a superfood, is a traditional food. That's what my people ate, right? We didn't have corn. Remember, I told you corn is not our food. So they didn't have corn. And then they had very low refined. In fact, nothing is refined. What am I talking about? There is no refined foods. They're not eating anything that went through any labs. They don't eat anything that has huge labels on the back. Did I mention candy, snack, chocolate, energy bars, protein bars? No, they're not eating that. There's no bar of anything. They're eating real foods. That's it. Real food created by God, created by nature. That's it. And then what else? What else? They are getting rest. They're sleeping a solid 10 to 5. Solid. No distractions, no internet, no TikTok, no videos, no dance videos that, you look down and then you look up. 3 hours have gone by. None of it. You actually go to bed and you do what you're supposed to do. You sleep. So they get rest. And they're not stressed because their task is one. Like they're not doing, they have their main job, they have 10 side hustles, and then they have kids to take care of. Mm-mm. The cortisol level on point. We don't have to worry about all that stressing, all that fussing. And you don't have anybody that you are looking at in China or in Singapore or in London that you're comparing your life to that is keeping you up at night. So life is simple. And then they are drenching their food with oil, raw oil. What have we learned? If you're keeping up with the research studies, you find out that if you want to eat carbs, by all means, but you have to dress it up. Meaning you have to eat the carbs with some protein or some high fat. And if you do that, you will help slow down the absorption of these carbs and therefore maintain a lower glycemic index. And then the last thing I wanted to add to that is when they're eating and they're adding all these fermented products throughout, either during the day or at night, they're keeping the digestive system moving. So being active, resting, and eating all of these fermented foods, you're digesting, your organs are happy, your kidney is happy, your liver is happy, your thyroids are happy, or your thyroid is happy, not thyroids. Your body is overall at peace, right? So when you look at the big picture, show me where you're going to find diabetes. So when you look at the old Africa in the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, growing up as a child, I didn't know any diabetic. The first diabetic I met was my father because he had relocated to America, and when he came back with diabetes. And then now they tell me it runs in my family. And I'm like, how does it run in my family if the first person that got it is just my father? How come all these other people that lived before don't have any don't tell me it's because we don't have diagnostic tools. It's because we didn't live the lifestyle that comes packaged with diabetes. It's a lifestyle disease. So no, I'm not asking you to move back to the village and go farming. If you want to get rid of your diabetes, yes, get rid of your diabetes. You got to apply some of these old wise principles. Get rid of the sugary, refined, toxic foods that you think anything, my mom tells me all the time, if it tastes good, it's not good for you. And that's the truth. Anything that tastes so juicy, if it's not a pineapple, it's not good for you. Oh, and then mind you, my great grandfather had a huge orchard. So I'm not gonna not mention this because what is that? There's this idea that fruits are bad for you. And fruits are high in sugar, so you shouldn't eat them. That's totally fine if you're Caucasian. And that's my belief. That's what I stand by. As an African that was raised in the tropics, that was born in the tropics, that their ancestors for millennia were in the tropics, we ate fruits and we didn't have diabetes. So I'm not going to sit here and buy into this new narrative. I believe that every genealogy has the food for their type. And as Africans, our food includes fruits. That's the end of that. I'm not going to tell you not to eat fruits. My grandfather had a huge orchard. He ate fruits all the time. Like he plucks out of his tree right in his house. It wasn't packaged and shipped from Guatemala or wherever. And I'm grateful for fruits coming from Guatemala because I don't know how else I would survive. I need my fruits. I eat my fruits. However, my point is the fruits are not transported from another country. They are right there in your backyard. You pluck them and you eat it. So how can you practically in 2025 improve or eliminate your diabetes? 1, rest. 2, cut off refined foods. 3, increase your complex carbs and not the simple carbs. 4, always eat your carbs with some protein or add some fat to it. 5, increase your physical activity. You need to work out. You need to dance. Africans, we like to dance every day. Put some Afro beats. dance. You don't have to go to a gym. Just make sure you move your body. You can't go to the farm. You make your own farm. You create an idea of a farm, imaginary farm in your living room. Farm. You have to move your body. You have to get rid of this idea that weight, oh yeah, it's okay, no, you have to maintain a healthy weight. I'm sorry. You got to maintain a healthy weight because weight has been associated with issues like diabetes. And when they say, African women, they got to have all this weight, again, in the 60s, in the 50s, in the 70s, we did not have those weights. These weights came from eating indomie, eating cow feed, and combining it with, roundabout, adding some goat and beef and chicken in one soup. You're eating 10 different types of meats. You're eating pounded yam, one whole yam by yourself. That's not the design for your body. That's not the design for your health. That's not what you're supposed to do. It's okay. I don't have a problem with you eating pounded yam. Like I've said, my grandparents ate these foods. They did not end up with any disease because they were active and they were balancing and they were not snacking and they were not doing any of that. And they were taking in some probiotics. So they're doing all the right things and the carbs don't get to be dumped. And oh, I forgot to mention, fast. They were fasting. They were eating OMAD before OMAD became a thing. Now it's some new revolutionary phenomenon. But that's how my great grandparents used to eat. They didn't eat 3 times a day. That whole concept is just marketing gimmick. We all know that by now. I hope we do. You don't have to eat 3 times a day. It doesn't make any sense, especially if you're not going to the farm. At least if you're going to the farm, you can justify eating 3 times a day. You are not farming. You're sitting at a desk. So you have no business eating 3 times a day. And if you're sitting at a desk, get up every hour or so for 10 minutes, 5 minutes. Just walk, stretch, do something. Because sitting is the worst thing you can do for your body or your heart. You are killing yourself sitting at the desk for 10 hours, 12 hours. Literally. But that's a topic for another day. I hope you gained something from this conversation today. I wanted to bring the wise tales, story of our great grandparents, stories from our elders, how they lived, why they lived as long as they lived, without any diseases, without medical technology, without the sciences, and they understood. No one had to tell them to dress their carbs. No one had to tell them that they needed to rest. No one had to tell them that they needed to exercise. They did what they knew intuitively they needed to do. So I hope you learned from them and you can apply some of their principles into your life today. Please, if you enjoy this, if you have any questions, if you have any comments, I wish you will add a comment or a question below. I will be happy to share more insight and subscribe to my channel. I thank you for your time and for your attention. Ciao, until next time.